Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Our athletes of the month, we're actually going to start with a carryover from the month of April. Jeff Chipwood. Jeff, if you would join us up here. He was unable to join us in April, so we wanted to bring him here and have him hear what Coach Maloney said about him. Coach Maloney is proud to nominate Jeff Chipwood as an athlete of the month. He's an outstanding role model and leader to his teammates and coaches. He leads by example with his impeccable work ethic and effort every day at practice and in games. Jeff showcases his speed and defensive ability in center field, and he's also a spark plug in our lineup, stealing bases and hitting over 600 in April. Fred, that's pretty good, Jeff. That's pretty good. Jeff also excels academically as he's near the top of his class, so he shows respect to coaches, teachers, opponents, and umpires. Something we can add that is very cool for Jeff that has happened since this is Jeff was also recognized as a first-team All-State baseball player, and that's exceptional. That happens to a very He says, I'm proud to nominate Jeff Chipwood as an athlete of the month for his outstanding effort, dedication, and leadership. Congratulations, Jeff, on being an April athlete of the month. Watch it. Moving on to our May athletes of the month. Our first one is Isabel Chitticone from our golf team. Isabel. Coach Neal. Izzy has both a great swing and a solid understanding of course management. She's positive at practice and during matches, always motivating those around her. A coach commented to Coach Neal at districts that, quote, she's one of the most honest players I've ever seen. I've already made you a better golfer than me. This truly shows Izzy's strong character and integrity. With continued practice, I know she will develop into a highly competitive golfer. Congratulations, Izzy, and looking forward to next season. Izzy Chitticone from the golf team. Our second athlete of the month for May was unable to join us due to a work commitment, but it is senior Megan Maloney of the soccer program. Coach Probst takes great pride in nominating Megan as the soccer team's May athlete of the month. Megan represents the soccer team as one of 3 captains that was selected by her peers. She started and played every minute of every game. Folks, that's truly remarkable at any level. I mean, just dumb luck, something could have happened, but she played every minute of every game. Was one of the most impressive athletic feats I've seen in a long time. She's a true leader on the field and is toughness personified. She never wants off the field and routinely empties her tank on the field. She's a strong communicator, directing other players and calling out marks. Megan has helped our team win back-to-back conference championships and does so from the center of the field. As her coach, we are thrilled to honor her as our athlete of the month, Megan Maloney. I'd just like to take a moment to congratulate our coaches and players. We had one heck of a spring sports season. Our coaches, our players, our parents, our community members came out to support what is in a very, 17, 18-year career in academics, one of the more impressive runs. We had 5 golfers compete in the state district golf tournament. In girls soccer, we had our first ever district championship and our second ever conference championship. Those were back-to-back. Track, we had a student, Taryn Walker Townsend, compete in the 100-meter dash in state. Taryn is also very young and will be back, which is very exciting. And then our baseball team. Well, I mean, what more can we say? Conference champ, district champ, state Final Four team. That's a pretty impressive run. We'll be bringing our state baseball team in here next month to honor them publicly in front of the community board. But thank you goes out to our players, our parents, our community members for a really fun sports season. Have a great one.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. Next up is Lorenzo Boyd, debt service update.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Boyd with Steeple, Managing Director of Public Finance, and sorry to see that everybody's leaving during my presentation. That's really, really good.
Let's reserve your name. Can
you guys see that? Pushing the wrong no buttons here. Okay, there we go. Okay, today I'm going to kind of give you guys an update on your debt service fund, which is your Fund 3. I'm going to go through the presentation here pretty quickly. It'll only take me about 45 minutes. So first I want to kind of go, I can't read that from here, so I do have a presentation that I'm going to go over. So what you'll see here are 4 series of bonds which currently Valley Park School District has outstanding. We call this a debt map. This represents principal only. So it's just kind of a quick summary of all the outstanding debt that you have in place from 4 series of bonds that are currently outstanding. You have your Series 2010 C bonds. Those were issued back in 2010. Remember, those were done through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act back in 2008, 2009, 2010. Those were qualified school construction bonds. Those were originally issued for 1.5 million. We call those qualified school construction bonds, where in our terms, we call them Q-Schoolies. So those bonds carry an interest rate of 5.54%. And they have an actual subsidy rate where you're getting subsidized by the federal government 100% of your interest on those bonds. So those bonds will never be callable. So essentially what you're paying over the next several years are the $400,000 of principal amount because it's basically interest free. And as you can see, those bonds are AA rated by Standard & Poor's and they're not callable. Then you have your Series 2014 B bonds. Those were refunding bonds. Those have a final maturity now of 2024. Those were issued in the original principal amount, a little over 1.3 million. We have 345,000 remaining. And as I mentioned, the final maturity is 2024. Then you have your 2017 A bonds, which were new money bonds. Those were issued back in June of 2017. Those were issued in the original principal amount of 9,485,000. You have 8,975,000 remaining. They do have a final maturity of 2017, and you can see the respective interest rates there from 2023 through 2037. And those have a call date of 3/1/2025. Probably about 5 years ago, you were allowed to do advanced refundings. You're no longer allowed to do advanced refundings, so you only can do current refundings at this point, meaning you can only refund your bonds on a tax-exempt basis within 90 days of their call date. So with those bonds having a maturity of call date of 3/1/2025, technically, by refunding those bonds on a tax-exempt basis, you cannot refund those until December of 2024. So within 90 days of the call date. Then you have your 2020 bonds. Those were refunding bonds as well. And those were issued to provide savings and refund the original 2014 A bonds. Those were issued in the original principal amount of 6,435,000. You have a little over 5.4 million remaining, and you'll see the maturities there from 2024 through 2032. So those will mature at that point. You see the various interest rates associated with those bonds. Next page. Whereas the previous page was a debt map that showed you only principal only, this page shows you principal and interest of all the previous 4 series of bonds that I've mentioned. And as you can see there, roughly over the next, I would say probably 10 years or so, your debt service on all those bonds are about 1.3 million. Then it jumps up to about 1.5 million from 2034 through 2037. So you can see the total principal and interest that you're going to be paying on all those 4 series of bonds. Next page. We call this a levy report, kind of going left to right. I think I've kind of shown you guys this report previously or in some of my other presentations. This is just your debt service fund, which is your Fund 3. And going from left to right, you'll see that you have tax year and debt year. The tax year is basically because the school district will set their tax rate in 1 year, in September of this year, and is to pay the debt service in 2023. And so that's why those numbers are different. And see, going from left to right, you have the tax year, the debt year, and then you have AV, your assessed valuation. And then you'll see there in the blue, those were your actual assessed valuation numbers. And it's the bottom of that page. You'll see in the middle, the historical assessed valuation. Over the past 5 years, you've had a little over 5% in terms of average AV growth for the last 5 years. So then you'll get your tax rate, which is 94.1 cents in your debt service fund. That brings in a little over like $1.9 million. You see, we're being conservative there by showing no assessed valuation growth. But if you look at the 5-year trend, you're looking at a little over 5% each year on average. Then we're assuming a 98.25% collection rate. How we get that number, we use the 5-year average, which you'll see on the bottom left as well of the last 5 years. Then you have your state assessed railroad utilities. We're using a 5-year average there. You'll see last year you put $43,000 into that fund, to your debt service fund, but you're averaging over the last 5 years a little over 39,000. So we're using that. So with that, that gives you a total amount of revenue, a little over $2 million. You'll see your debt service is around 1.4 million. This is where the numbers get really juicy and people are really happy to see me despite what happened earlier. Believing. You'll see there that you're bringing in about $2 million of revenue. You have about 1.3 million of debt service. So you're going to be adding to your debt service fund each year to the tune of what you see in front of you, about $600,000. And you'll see that your fund balance is growing each year. It's green. And so that means whenever we highlight that fund balance that's green, that shows that you're over 100%. So the state auditor, the fund 3 kind of works differently than your fund 1 and 2. The state auditor allows you to keep up to 100% for your debt service fund. If you go over 100%, you can do one of 2 things. Well, one of 3 things. You can, if you're in a position, you can issue new money bonds. You can defease bonds, which is pay off some of your bonds early. Kind of, if you had credit card debt, you came into some money and you start to pay off some of that credit card debt or pay off your loans pretty early, or you can actually lower your debts, your tax rate. And most school districts, and I'll show you on the next couple of pages, they look to kind of be what we've done probably the last 5 years, last 5 to 10 years. A lot of school districts have taken advantage of using some of those excess funds to pay off bonds early or to pay off their debt early. On the next page, this is actually the form that Kelly loves. This is the Form C, which is, he does this every year. This is the state auditor form to set your tax rate just in your debt service fund. It's kind of formulaic. You just kind of put in the numbers and it spits out what your levy should be in your debt service fund. And I'll just kind of highlight a couple of different things. You have your assessed valuation, which is number 1. Then you have your amount required to pay debt service, which is the debt that you're going to pay in 2023. And then you have your 1 year, what they call reserve payment, which is the debt service that you're going to pay in 2024. And at the bottom, what you'll see there is because of where you are in your debt service fund, it's telling you that you need to take that tax rate to 61 cents from the 94 cents. So that's where we come into play, where we know that we have excess funds in the debt service fund. So we use some of those funds to pay off some of your bonds early and to actually look at paying off some of those bonds early, as I mentioned. Next page. This is kind of looking at a defeasance. And as I mentioned, probably 9 out of 10 times when people have excess funds in their debt service fund, they look to pay off some of those bonds early. So we're just assuming, looking at the funds that you have on hand right now in your debt service fund, what could you pay off in terms of how much money do you have to kind of use from your debt service fund to pay off some of those bonds early to keep your tax rate at 94 cents. And just in simplistic terms, we've kind of discussed a couple of different things, but looking at that middle stanza there, you'll see I kind of factored in a defeasance. So you'll see that your debt service fund balance as of the end of this fiscal year, 6/30, was a little over 1.7 million. You do have a payment in September of this year, a little over 244,000. We're estimating that you probably would look to spend about 830,000 from your debt service fund. So what we would do, you would simply take that $830,000, put it with a third-party trustee bank. We will purchase securities in advance, and then that $830,000 may pay off probably, around $700,000 in debt, in principal amount of debt. But that money will sit there in that escrow account. It would earn interest until its call date or until maturity, depending on which bonds that we actually defease. We typically look at defeasing your higher interest rate bonds. So we take those bonds out. Those bonds are technically off your books. So if we take that $830,000 roughly and pay off $700,000 of bonds, then whatever amount of bonds that you have currently outstanding, if you had 9 million outstanding, now you would have 8.3 million outstanding. We will send you new reports showing that those bonds are paid off, so that you can deliver those reports to your auditor, and we'll send you new schedules showing that you're not responsible for paying those, that principal and interest on those bonds as they become due. And we do what we call a legal defeasance, whereas we get an accountant and a verification agent to look at the reports to make sure that the money that we put into the escrow is sufficient to pay the interest on and debt service on those bonds as they become due into their call date. So once that money is gone, it's gone, those bonds are gone, and they're legal off your books. And you'll see from the next page, from the next page is kind of a revised Form C showing the reflection of the defeasance. And you'll see there that once we use that $830,000 to pay off some of those existing bonds, you could then set your tax rate at a little over 97 cents, but you'll do what we call a voluntary rollback to the 94 cents that you've actually levied in the past. And if you go to the previous page, you may see there, send it back. You see there the next year, you're in green again already. We've talked about various things with the school district. So you'll be in a position to probably do a defeasance next year or to look at new money bonds in the future. And so should the district decide to not do anything in terms of new money issuance next year, we can look at paying off more of your bonds as well with some of those excess funds. I think that was it. There goes my 45 minutes. Now I'll answer any questions.
Lorenzo,
Mhm.
for our board and our community, could you please explain real quick, you talked about a callable date or a non-callable date. Could you please explain to our board to make sure we understand what a callable date is?
Okay. Yes, so some of those, I'll kind of go back to some of those. I probably need to pull out
Slide 2.
my slides.
Slide 2.
It's slide 2.
Yeah.
So going back. Yep. So you'll see there. So basically what happens when you can call debt or callable bonds. Think about a home mortgage. When you do a home mortgage, you can actually refinance your home mortgage at any given time. Typically in the bond market, if you do 20-year bonds, probably typically the first 8 years are what they call non-callable. So if you were to buy those bonds in the first 8 years, those bonds are yours through maturity. So those bonds are not able to be called, and the district is paying those interest rates on those bonds. Years 9 through 20, those bonds are technically able to be called within 90 days of the call date. So if interest rates are favorable, as you know, you've known what has happened probably the last 4 months. They've had 3 interest rate hikes over the past 4 months or so, 125 basis points, 150 basis points, and the most recent one, 75 basis points. And they're talking about another 75 basis points in July. So some of those bonds, if you look, I'll just kind of give you an example here. The 2017A issue, you'll see they have a call date of 3/1/2025. So that means all the bonds 26 and thereafter can be called for savings. So if in 2024, if interest rates are favorable, you can refinance those bonds for savings and call those bonds in advance of the maturity. You put on new bonds at lower interest rates and you go into those savings from refinancing those bonds. So for instance, let's look at that 2027 maturity, which has a 3%. Let's say in 2024, interest rates are 1.5%. You can call that 3% bond. It's technically off your books, and that new bond you'll be responsible for at 1.5%. And that's what we've done in 2014 bonds, 2014B, we refinanced those 2010 bonds for savings. And then in 2020, we refinanced the 2014 A bonds for savings. So that's what we mean between callable and non-callable. And the qualified school construction bonds, the reason why those are not callable, we pay no interest. So you can't get any better than that at this point.
The only other thing, Lorenzo, whenever I was looking at it, on the 2020, if you look at 2027, if our community, our board's looking at that, it goes 3% on the coupon, and then on 2027, it's 1%. Explain to us why that's 1%.
Yeah.
And why it's a different one, so we all understand.
And that's usually probably just because whenever we go to sell bonds, through the process, you have buyers who are interested in certain coupons and certain interest rates. And so we look at bringing the most favorable interest rates at that point in time. So what you'll see is that there was a buyer in 2000, believe it or not, 2027, that was looking for a discount bond or a 1% bond, and they wanted that for their actual portfolio. So we sold that bond at 1%. That's just a factor of buyers versus sellers. So we're more than happy to give you that 1% at any given time. But the market, typically what you'll see there was the 3% coupons. That was pretty standard. But for that particular maturity, there was a buyer that was looking for a 1% coupon. And it probably was a mutual fund that was looking to hold their rates down and put that into portfolios.
Great. Any other questions?
Oh, I've got,
Right.
I've been waiting for this moment. No, I'm kidding. But first of all, thanks for being here. As you know, we've worked really hard to kind of get our long-term debt under control, and it's nice to see from a few years ago where we had a lot of red, we've now got a lot of green. And as you already alluded to, last year we refinanced, saved the district about $1 million over the next 10 or 11 years on refinancing those loans. And I just had a couple questions for clarification. I think it was actually on slide 5, Lorenzo. Slide 5 or page 5. I'll tell you one more. Yeah, so they can't read that in the room, but talk again just a little bit about voluntary reduction.
Okay.
Because I'm certainly not nearly as smart as you are with numbers, but if my numbers calculated right, we could have levied $1.38 this year. But because of the voluntary rollback is how we got to our 94 cents. So we actually rolled back about 0.44 and some change. Is that correct?
I would have to see the previous form. See, so what this form is saying basically, with the money that you have on hand right now, if you were not to do a defeasance, you would have to actually only levy 61 cents.
Right.
61 cents, because what that's saying is the way the spreadsheet really works is looking at the funds that you have on hand and the next 2 years of debt service payments. And it's saying, what do you have to actually minimally levy to pay 2023 and 2024? And so with that, because of excess funds on hand and you're over 100%, it's saying there that you only need, let's see here, $1.3 million based on the money that you have. So if you look at number 7 there, you see line 7?
Yeah.
It's saying if you factor in what you have to pay in 2023, what you have to pay in 2024, what you have in the bank, you only really need to levy to generate 1.3 million of what we call debt revenue. So it's saying that you should only have to levy 61 cents, which we don't want.
Right.
Dr. Deals is correct. If you look at our current performance sheet.
21-22 performance.
Yeah, we actually rolled back.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have that.
We actually rolled back this year to 94.10 because we did not want our taxpayers to pay more money than they needed.
Right.
So we actually did that.
And so the reason why, see, I didn't have that was the previous years. So you're probably right where you roll back. So if you look at, we're probably allowing you to actually, what made you roll back, if you look at the other page, you have that assessed valuation growth. When you have assessed valuation growth, you're going to bring in way more revenue. And so what that's going to do is bring in way more revenue to your debt service fund. So it's going to make you do a voluntary rollback. And so it would say, you don't have enough money, so you can voluntarily roll that levy back from $1, was it 31 to 94 cents?
It's $1.38.
38.
And Dr. Lewis, you brought up last month too, if we look at the historic evaluation on those even number years, things tend to be pretty flat compared to the previous year. So it's kind of on those odd years is when we're catching that excessive evaluation. So
Reassessment and non-reassessment.
exactly.
years.
And so that's why if the board remembers, we talked about kind of having flat AV next year for our budget proposal because we don't want to put our district in a liability where we're over predicting and over promising. Obviously, it's always great if there are surprises on that positive side, but as you can see, in those even years, it's pretty much flat from the previous years. So we don't typically see growth on even years. We get them back on those odd years.
And you'll see there kind of in 2021, which is kind of difficult to see, you had 5% in 2021. And as you kind of mentioned, it was down the previous year before that, almost 1%. But then you see in 2019, you had almost 18%. And that was pretty standard across the county, where people were seeing double digits. Where I live, we were up similar to that, like 15% in the Hazelwood School District.
Thanks for all your help.
Any other questions?
No, it's all right.
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you very much.
Oh, and one other thing I do want to mention, so with that, if you guys are okay with moving forward with the defeasance, we will be back in July. The attorneys would be back in July to approve a defeasance resolution. We would use some of that $830,000 to kind of put aside, and all you would have to do is do that defeasance by the end of the year, because when Kelly does the actual Form C, all he has to stipulate is that he expects to spend that money by December 31st. So we would just pass a defeasance resolution next year with the lawyers, not next year, but next meeting, to say that we're gonna set aside $830,000. We'll pay those bonds off, and we'll just make sure that we do the defeasance by the end of the year. It's not like a bond issue, where a bond issue takes 6 to 8 weeks. This takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And it's usually it's minimal effort. So we should be back to you guys if you're okay with that, to approve that defeasance resolution next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is strategic plan update.
See you guys.
I told them to not do that great, that way. the harvest- Well, thank you for letting me come this evening. I'm Julie Schrader, I'm your Director of Special Education. And because we are small but mighty, I also serve in all of the area coordinator roles as well here in Valley Park. We sit at about 100 students with IEPs, school age K-12, which is around 12%. Because of our size, a couple of students in, a couple of students out could obviously change those percents pretty significantly. But we have a lot of amazing things to celebrate this evening. One of the first things I'll share with you is just kind of a recap of the special school district mission and vision, and then our strategic plan. We'll go through our pillar work that really focused on pillars 1, 2, and 3 here at Valley Park. And through that key work, our goals and our outcomes, and then some really celebrations and then some opportunities for growth as we move into next school year. So as you read through, I won't read everything on the next couple of slides, but I think the important thing is that when we look at what our mission is and our focus for special school district, and we compare it to that at Valley Park, you're going to see very similar themes, very similar patterns in working with making sure each student is getting their needs met, that individualization, really looking at our staff, our collaboration, that equity, and then that engagement. And we also just recently went through a lot of work on these pieces, so there are some updates from the last couple of years. And that's kind of our snapshot of the strategic plan on the page. And you'll kind of see the same thing when you look at what I would consider our pillars. They're very similar language to what we're doing here in Valley Park. And obviously the special school district, we're really taking into consideration what the needs are across the entire county. And that's been a really big focus with equity, as we're looking at not just what happens in our small pocket here in Valley Park, but really what happens with all of our students with IEPs across St. Louis County. Our pillar 1, which our principals will be talking about as well, is that ensuring student success. And so really looking at that college career readiness, that personalized learning, and that creation of the culture of belonging. And one thing I thought it was really important to do is to show that direct alignment to our SSD CSIP goal. And so you can see right there that it's that connection with student performance and really honing in on literacy, numeracy, and that social emotional learning under that behavior. Some of the key work we do a lot. If any of you know any of our special education staff, they work every single day, lots of hours and on the weekend. But really one of the things, some of the key things that really stand out, which is why our students are doing so well, is the time and dedication through our department meetings and our data meetings. And so we do meet monthly, but we're not just meeting arbitrarily in random groups. So we really spend some time working within each of the building levels, but then even diving deeper with our students that are really in our social emotional programs and our students that are accessing services in our functional classrooms. I also have a note in here about classroom learning systems. So Dr. Dills just talked a lot in our district about that continuous improvement model. And we've been doing that at special school district for a number of years. And so that's just the language we use in special school district. Goals and outcomes, especially when we go into special education. So really wordy, we have some really specific templates that we use in with special school district. Our main goal source here when we're looking at literacy and numeracy is FastBridge. So obviously our elementary and middle school are using that as well with students without IEPs. So we do have some comparable data at a district level. And the biggest thing for the literacy and numeracy, when we're looking at that, you'll kind of see the language in there. But our growth for numeracy, we had an increase from 28% to 38% of our students meeting our reading growth. And those had dipped for the last couple of years because of those COVID pieces and trying to do special education in a virtual world or a hybrid world. And so that is a huge increase for that 10%. And then for the math growth for our targets, we actually increased from 44% to that 56%. And so for people who are not familiar with special education, you hear 30 or you hear 50. We have to remember these are our students with our highest needs. They have significant challenges and we are still doing really great things. You're not going to be able to see this very well, but I was just going through the county data. So I'm going to pass just a couple of slides around. They're not on here. You can barely read this because my printer was off a little bit, but I really dropped those arrows in so you can kind of look at some of those comparisons for the county. So that first page, as this kind of floats around, is the reading growth, and we're looking at our reading growth as it compares to other students in the county, and then that national percentile. So we're really sitting in that upper percent of all of those comparison districts. And we're up there with other districts that are considered very high performing districts in St. Louis County. So we're looking at Webster Groves and Ladue and Brentwood. We are right there at the top. And then if you go to math, this is very exciting, which is so, I was looking at this, like, but that one little blurb on the other thing is the difference of 1 or 2 kids. So our county-wide growth, we are #1 in the county. #1. And that is outstanding. And then that comparison to the national percentile, you can see that the national percentile, the county percentile, county average for the national percentile is 6 and we are at 9. So we are still above that, but we obviously want to continue to work on those levels across the board. There's a lot of FastBridge data. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right. Pillar 2 is our talented staff. If you've ever had the opportunity to talk to me one-on-one or in a small group, I am so, so proud of my staff. Every year I'm like, this is the best staff I've ever had. We lost a couple of really great staff this year to retirement and to other positions. And the staff we hired, they're outstanding. It gives me goosebumps. So very, very excited about our staff as we move into next school year. And my focus is always on professional learning and making sure that they have the tools they need, the time to dive into those tools, the time for collaboration. I'm very fortunate with our building principals that we really have conversations on where do they need to go with their buildings with professional learning versus when can I have them for that really intense special education. Our data source for this is really looking 2 pieces at their educator growth plan. And so it's really important to me that everything that they do on their personal professional growth plan ties right back to this plan. So we've spent a lot of time making sure that it's very meaningful. 100% of our staff met their goals. I have one staff member that's going to continue next year, and that's simply because the professional learning dismantled in the middle of the school year. So we really couldn't hold her accountable for those goals. The 3 focus areas that we really had were on student goals, which is that indicator 2.2, connected to the DESE standards, around classroom management and environment, which is 5.2, and then 7.4, which is all around our data systems. And then the other piece that falls under here is that connection to our engagement survey here through Valley Park. So my focus area was really on that indicator with principal and supervisor setting clear expectations for judging performance. We started at a 3.9, which is actually very high, but we did increase that to 4.38, which met that goal significantly. But I also celebrated some other areas that staff are really gave some shout outs. So, you know, just that opportunity to provide some really good strengths and celebrations for their performance, that genuine care, which again, if you know how I feel about my staff, I love them very much and they're wonderful. And I'm very proud to serve as their leader here at Valley Park. And then pillar 3 was all around that engagement for our families and our community. And so one piece that we did new this year, our principals do a great job with that connection, but really having that opportunity to have that family dispatch that really highlights not only the things that we're doing in special education here in Valley Park, but also some of the things that we're doing countywide. If you haven't been a part of special school district and some of their family resources, we are literally #1 in the nation for providing those resources to families. So it has never made sense to replicate that here. It's all about making sure our families know how to access it and where to get that information. And so this was just huge, and it was just a starting ground, but we had everything from celebrating staff to extra information from Valley Park that we really wanted to highlight, resources around social emotional learning. This actually was the issue that I actually reversed the order because it was right after the tragedy that happened in Texas, and just making sure our families had extra resources at their fingertips for working with their families. And then this spring, we also hit really hard, like summer activities, some things that are free, some things that are a little bit of a cost, but making sure that our students can continue that work. And in addition to the newsletter, obviously that's a very small piece that we looked at, always being engaged in everything that our buildings are doing in the community. And the other piece that I added at the bottom is the student participation in our CBVI program. So Ms. Link at the high school does a great partnership. For years it was with Circle of Concern. After COVID, that kind of folded, and we've been focused just on Merrimack Bluffs. And not only are we working there 2 days a week with our students with IEPs, I think she has employed 12 or 13 students. Like literally they should hire her because she is recruiting literally on a daily basis. And we're talking about kids coming out of high school, full-time jobs with benefits. So it's a really, really cool thing. And then that was just my goal was to hit 50 families, which is about 50% of our families with IEPs. So you can see that we definitely did that most months. The months that we didn't hit it, I'm like, oh, it's the holidays, people are really busy. So again, some of our celebrations to wrap up, just our ability to problem solving in our data teams. And this is also not just with our students with IEPs, but we do have a leadership committee, especially at the elementary level, that sits on, and we problem solve around all students. But we also have bits and pieces of that at the middle school and high school as well. That application, our professional learning goals, all of the resources and supports. We also have some additional staff that come in. We have an amazing ABA associate this year who is probably the best that I've worked with in my 25 years. A wonderful social emotional behavior specialist and an instructional coach. We also continue to celebrate that balance of expectations between Valley Park and Special School District. And this is my plug for SSD every year. We could be, I believe, a training site for functional program K-12 in Valley Park for what we're doing in those 3 classrooms. And then, but we always want to learn and grow. So we did have a new position this year with our instructional coach. We're really going to look at that tighter connection to our teams, both in the gen ed setting and the special education setting. Some more opportunities for professional learning and coaching for our paraprofessionals, because they're the ones in some of the toughest positions, working with some kids that really need some extra support. And then continuing on that social emotional behavior programming. All right, any questions that I can answer for the
Anybody have any questions?
No, I think everybody's a great job, though.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I tried to drop in some pictures too, so. Sorry, Sam. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm always so cryy, but It is a pleasure to serve our students in our community. This is my 25th year in special education, and this is my 10th year, going into my 10th year in Valley Park. And I love it every day, and I'm very excited to be here, so thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
The joke was I was gonna tackle her, but I didn't. I let her finish because it was so good and I was letting
Social emotional learning.
Right, okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Solberger, principal at the middle school, and I am just finishing up my first year here in Valley Park, and I'm super excited that I'm going to get to share with you all of the wonderful things that were accomplished at the middle school in collaboration with our students, our staff, and our parents, because we all really work together and we set out to make some big gains. And I think you're gonna hopefully hear tonight from the work that we did, we accomplished a lot of those goals. All right, so the first strategic plan goal that we had was under ensuring student success. And the things that we were gonna focus on this year were how to elevate those student and staff relationships. So we started the year off with some PD from our teacher of the year, and he focused on how do you build relationships with your students at the beginning of the year. Gave the teachers a lot of strategies that they could use in their classrooms, and then we built on that throughout the year. Mid-year, we had another professional learning opportunity where we had some of our other teacher leaders present on how to create genuine connections with your students. And we knew that if we could create those relationships with students, we were going to cultivate a place where kids knew that they were safe to learn, take risks, and there would be that trust there. We also did a lot of team building throughout the year, and many of the team building opportunities that we built in, they started as teacher-led, and as the year went on, students were bringing ideas, and they were excited to lead those activities for their peers. And that was a really great transition that we got to see. Our second goal that we had under this pillar was ensuring academic growth in math and reading for all kids. And we used our Fast Bridge assessment that Julie actually just talked about to help us track that data. Our students took the test 3 times a year, and we did make some significant gains. I can't say that 100% of our kids made the growth that we wanted them to see, but we did reduce the number of kids that were in that high risk area from 15% at the beginning of the year to 12%. So lots of kids who needed to move out of that really scary area did make that progress. The way that we did this was we had regular team meetings that teachers met as grade levels, our interventionists pushed into those meetings. I attended the counselor so that we could, discuss individual students and the needs that they had and what we're going to do in their courses to make sure that they were meeting all their standards. We also collected some input from our parents and our community on our grading practices and how we could better communicate information about student achievement to parents. And what we found was we did need to make some revisions to our grading practices, which we did. And then we focused a lot on, the communication of the why and the how behind grading so that parents understood the grades as well as the students. And we changed our intervention time a little bit to become more flexible. So previously, intervention time was when our middle school students either had intervention or an enrichment English language arts kind of lab. And that was pretty much set. Once you were in one of the classes, you stayed in there. And this year we tried a little bit more of a fluid movement where if you needed help on something specific, you were in your intervention class. And if you already had mastery of that, then you could go out and be in the enrichment or ELA classes. And I think that flexibility worked really well with our students as well. And that's something we're looking to continue next year. For our second strategic plan goal of valuing our talented staff, this one was easy because the middle school has wonderful, wonderful staff that just embraced me coming in as their leader. They were just willing to do whatever was asked and go above and beyond all of the time. So it was easy to build relationships with them and get them engaged in what we were doing. So one of the things that we did was we celebrated a lot. So you'll see in that picture, that's our traveling lemon wreath. And each month at our faculty meeting, it was awarded to one of our staff members and we gave them a shout out about the amazing things that they were doing. We also had the opportunity for staff to recognize each other and they would get a lemonade from one of their colleagues. And it was just kind of a little tradition that we started at the middle school to recognize each other. It's kind of a joke, me with my balloons and themes and things like that, but I like to create a moment. Like I want people to remember it. I want people to know that things are special and nothing is just happening, just last minute or anything like that. I put time and preparation in the things that we do because it is special, and I want the school to be special for our staff as well as our students. Another one of the pieces that we implemented to really build those relationships and also make sure that our staff were valued and their voices were heard. We created more committees that staff could be on, but they were also more focused. So a group focused on grading, a group focused on professional development, a group focused on character education. And that worked for us. Teachers felt like, okay, I have a voice, I am being heard, and that went really well. It also led to that collective efficacy that this is our school and we all play an important part in the success that we have or the failure that we have. So lots of communication, making sure that everybody is in the know with, weekly newsletters, emails, meetings, and then sharing that sense of responsibility for our school. The next pillar that we focused on was our community, and coming in as a new principal, it was about establishing the relationships. We weren't really to the point of continuing them yet, they had to be built. So the way that we built those relationships was, from the get-go, I had some summer meeting times where students and their parents could come up and meet me and have a popsicle and just chat. There was weekly communication that I sent out, a newsletter, our Hawk Talk, that parents knew that they could expect on Thursdays. We held both an open house and a curriculum night. We felt like they had two different purposes and our amazing middle school teachers were willing to do both. So we had two opportunities right off the bat for our families and caregivers to get into the middle school. We also engaged our families through various opportunities throughout the year. We had our career fair where parents could be presenters, and at our student-led conferences, we let parents say, what they might be willing to help with at that event. We also asked for input and feedback regularly on our different events we were doing so that we could make changes for the following years and see what events were valuable to parents and which ones are like, oh, we could do without giving up an evening for this particular event. So that was pillar 3. So celebrations, there's a ton of them, but for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on 3. So the first one I want to talk about is the just the embracing of the new committee work and staff responsibilities and how that increased our employee engagement. So our mean score for employee engagement was a 4.53 out of a 5, which is the 95th percentile nationally. So that was a great score. We were really excited that the staff reported that they felt like their voices were heard and they were engaged in the work that we were doing. I kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm also really proud of our students and the way they are starting to find their voice and they are taking on leadership roles. So one of the things that students have, shared with us is they want more of a voice in what they're learning about. So we surveyed our students to see what they would be interested in and what kind of courses we might design for them. And as a result of that, we're adding 9 new electives for next year that are things that kids want to take. And then, as far as the teacher component goes, our staff members have reached out to the high school teachers. So I'll give an example. There's a money math class that's going to happen. So the teachers reached out to the high school business teacher and figured out okay, what kind of standards that the kids will need for high school can we start introducing in middle school so that we're starting to really build those pathways for our kids. It's a work in progress, and the middle school teachers have been coming in over this summer and working on building these new courses that I'm really excited will hopefully give kids some opportunities to take some classes that they haven't had before. Our student council, which we had before as Character Council and National Junior Honor Society and some of these other student groups, have really taken off this year as well. Lots of ideas that kids are coming up with, and then they run with them and they lead activities, and it's really cool to see. And same thing with Hawk Time, which is our advisory. Kids are leading activities, and it's great to see them empowered, and I hope that continues. The other thing that I'm really excited about moving forward and I want to celebrate is we did a lot of learning around multi-tiered system of supports, or RTI, response to intervention. We didn't really have anything up and running when I arrived at the middle school, and I knew it was an area that we were going to have to attack, because if we want to ensure high levels of learning for all students, so they're learning at grade level or above, there has to be a plan for students who aren't going to master that at the same pace as everyone else, because everybody can master it, but how are we going to ensure that the students who need a little bit more time are going to have that? So we spent this year learning. There were 5 of the staff members that were able to attend a conference with teachers from across the nation to learn more about what we could offer. And next year we'll start to implement that. And we're going to be using professional learning communities so that teachers have time to collaborate and look at student data and make modifications. And I'm really excited about the direction that that is going. So areas for growth, because there are some. A team of teachers and myself looked at our student perception data, our peer perception data, as well as the academic data and staff engagement pieces. And there were a couple glaring areas that do connect pretty well. So the first score that was pretty low from our students was students at my school show respect to each other. The kids scored that at 2.79 out of 5. So that's how our students talk to each other. So yes, whereas we see that they can be leaders when they're leading each other, but that overall respect that they show to each other in polite discourse and things like that. So we're going to use our character education and make some improvements there to hopefully create a place where kids treat each other with respect. Another area that we want to attack next year, and this came from our parent feedback data, was just the frequency that they are receiving specific feedback from teachers. And so how do we increase the quality of the feedback, the frequency of the feedback, so that parents truly understand how their students are progressing? So that's an area that we want to grow in next year. And then the last one, which I think goes nicely with this, is having students set more personalized goals and track those goals and make sure that they are working towards that mastery that we talked about, that they're learning at or above grade level. And then hopefully they'll be able to communicate that to parents too. So those two can kind of tie together. But those are areas based on our perception data that we think we can make some gains in. So if our theme for last year was building relationships, I think you could see here that the theme for next year is really improving our communication skills, the communication of kids to their parents, kids to each other, and teachers and staff to parents. So how are we going to improve that overall communication? All right, so some of the ideas that we have that we're really excited about, we gotta wait a couple more months before we can fully implement, but it's gonna be good. So the first one is this year our teachers spent some time identifying essential learning outcomes. We can't teach a million standards every year, but if we have the ones that we know are the most important, the guaranteed and viable curriculum that we will ensure a student that leaves 6th grade can do these things, a 7th grade teacher would know. When I get student A, they know these things to that level of mastery. So we've already identified those learning essentials, but next year we'll be working as those collaborative teams to make sure that the students are in fact reaching that level of mastery. So we're gonna keep working on that academic piece. The collaborative team meetings are going to help us with our progress monitoring. That's where we're bringing in our professional learning community work, as well as continuing that team time. And then we also are excited to have a student leadership team. So what this in its infancy stages will look like is right now we have a student council that meets after school, but we would like to do something that's during the day where each Hawk Time advisory has a delegate. We're thinking maybe we have a quarterly delegate so that gets many kids to have the opportunity to be a part of this. And instead of going to Hawk Time one day a week, those students would meet with myself. So they would kind of be that liaison between their Hawk Time group and myself. Students reported, that they wanted to have more of a say in the rules. I think their actual term was rules are not fair. So I know they want their cell phones down. I don't know that we're going to do that, but I want to help the students understand the chain of command and how, if you want to make a change, what is the process that you go about? And I don't know that I feel like maybe except for cell phones, that there's anything that's completely off limits. So I think that, having those conversations and determining what kids value is important and where we as adults can maybe give some structures and supports so that we can, kind of meet a pathway will be a really cool opportunity. So the student leadership team, stay tuned. Hopefully I have a good report for you on that for next year. For the second pillar, valuing our talented staff. So our teachers did get to meet more together this year and we'll get to meet next year. We're hoping to kind of extend that with more interdisciplinary collaboration and giving kids an opportunity when they share what they want to learn about for those cross-curricular units. So letting the Hawk Times kind of come up with, okay, here's what we want to learn about or study, And then the language arts teacher would own a portion of that. The math teacher would own a portion of that. So it's giving students voice and choice in what they're learning. It's allowing teachers a directed way to collaborate and hopefully getting kids excited and some real results on, standards mastery still. We're going to continue our celebrations and communications. Those worked. We're excited. We'll keep that. I don't know what the theme is for next year, but I'm sure there will be balloon arches. And the third one is continuing our professional learning community engagement. So, having all teachers have a role in the process and, making sure that we are getting results and sharing those results and all being accountable for the things that I know we're capable of achieving. The last thing, our pillar 3, is how we're going to engage our families in the community. So we want to give students a way to communicate their progress with their parents and families. So we're going to work on putting together a place, we'll call it a portfolio, where they can keep examples of their work, artifacts per se, so that when it is time for those student-led conferences, it will all be housed in one location that they can show what they are learning and how they're doing. We also want to make sure that we're communicating their progress on benchmarks more frequently so that our parents know how their students are progressing, and then increasing just positive phone calls, team newsletters, and daily announcement slides instead of, only having, we've had great student leaders read our announcements, but the parents don't get those same announcements. So, how can we share that information with homes too, so that we're all on the same page? So those are some of our action steps that we're excited to engage our families and communities. I was supposed to say questions, so I don't know. All right, so that was a lot of information in a little bit of time, but I'm happy to share more excitement at the middle school if there's things you want to hear more about or any questions that you might have.
Will you be reporting back to us your progress on a regular basis?
Like for this report for next year?
No, not yearly, but I would like it more frequently than that, so we know how things are going.
Sure. Would it just like an email update work?
So the building principals meet quarterly with me as up to all the leaders on their scorecards each year, and then they report back out annually to the board on their yearly goals. Because as we know, goals are broken down into quarters and years, and so sometimes we see minimal progress early and more growth late. So that's kind of the system.
Well, I would expect that to occur because when you first start, you're going to be finding your way. And then you'll see what's successful and not, but I would like to have it more frequently than once a year.
I agree with Faye. I'd like to see, especially since we have some new goals here, I'd like to see what's happening with them, besides waiting a whole nother year.
I'm excited because I think the middle schools did need to have new goals to do. So I'm excited about that. I just would like to have a more frequent progress report.
Maybe like semester or trimester. I'm thinking the first quarter of school.
Yeah,
is not-
like Dr. Dilge said, so, all of this comes in our scorecard like the district has. So there's one specifically for the middle school. So I meet with Dr. Dilge quarterly to go over the progress and provide data checkpoints then. So I don't see why we couldn't communicate that out to the board as well.
As a parent of an outgoing middle school student, I just wanted to say thank you for your engagement with the parents of that class, and just really getting some of our feedback, those that attended your meetings, about different celebrations that might look good. I mean, I don't know how long it's been since we've had a promotion ceremony. But even though Ansley couldn't be there, it was nice to watch. It was nice to see, and I know that a lot of the parents really appreciated that. So big kudos to you. I know that was a not always easy, but I thought it was great. So thank you very much for doing stuff like that and listening to some of the parents and turning on a dime when you needed to. So it was good.
Thank you. Yeah, and a lot of those end of the year 8th grade celebrations, I didn't mention this, but we did a Zoom call with the parents to figure out what the parents thought the kids would want. Then we went back to the students and we said, okay, this is what your parents are brainstorming. We thought we had a really great theme at that meeting, and then we took it to the kids and they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. there was, on all of the things that we did, there was a lot of intentionality, and and voice giving.
Maybe you should reverse that, go to the kids first. What's acceptable.
We were gonna do like a glow theme. It was gonna be awesome. Yeah, they wanted to walk the red carpet. That's what we did.
But it was recognized, the voice given to the, to the students and to the parents, so we really appreciated it.
I love the staff celebrations. I'm really big into gratitude and just acknowledging greatness, and people work harder when that is there. I love that you're setting up something with the students and you, because I feel like when they have that open communication and understand the process of how we handle things instead of like going immediately to the top, or,
Right.
it's important to teach everybody that, but it's especially important to teach them as they're moving up into adulthood. And I also love positive phone calls, because I got my first one ever from my youngest this year, and he's been in school multiple years. And actually, I had a panic attack when the teacher called. I was like, oh God, what happened? He's like, oh, this is a great phone call. And I'm like, I've never got one of them. So I think that's fantastic.
This year, every
It's always nice
time
to
the
hear.
school called, I was like, oh, somebody is getting quarantined again.
Last year.
Yeah. Any other questions I can answer?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to be here. And this presentation is supposed to be 6 to 8 minutes, so yes, I'm
Oh, we just.
behind schedule or
That was a
tough room to follow. So thank you for having me. It's great to talk about high school, and it was I could say there's so many celebrations about this school year. During it was rocky, it was a struggle at times, but I think, and at the end of every school year, you kind of can take a deep breath and look back and be very proud of what our staff accomplished, what our kids accomplished, and some things that won't show up on this presentation tonight, as it's very narrowly focused to kind of some strategic plan goals that we put in, were that 68 of our 69 seniors have graduated up to today. And we're still working. I have a meeting with the 69th kiddo tomorrow. So we continue to work with that person, and we want him done, and he wants to get done. So I think we're going to make it. We had in-person graduation, we had in-person prom, just things that haven't happened since I've been here. So it was really exciting to have those things. Class of 2022 hosted a trivia night. Our average ACT score increased slightly. So we should celebrate that. It's, again, we want to see more gains, but it is exciting to see that move the right direction. So with that, then we'll focus a little bit more on our strategic plan goals. And the first pillar we talked about is ensuring student success. And what we talked about this year was really making sure that our kids understood what an individual career and academic plan is. We have a lot of work to do. We put a great team together that I'll talk about in just a little bit. We continue to make sure our kids understand the pathways that they have post-secondary, college, career, and military. Making sure that our staff continue to grow at all staff meetings and professional development meetings, where we did intentional student engagement activities at them that they could use very quickly in their classroom the next day if they wanted to. And we really, follow the middle school's lead with elevating our students and staff relationships. So those are a lot of the things we're looking at in our pillar 1 success. Our pillar 2, valuing our talented staff, and you guys know we have an awesome high school staff, but we talked about really wanting to make sure we recognize one another this year. We do great work, and we want to make sure we're recognizing one another for that. And then our PDC team at the high school, and also our district PDC team. We were very intentional with what the activities and what we were looking at doing this year. And it was a lot of hard, tedious work this year that I hope we will start to see results in later on. So we'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit. As we continue to engage our family and community, this year was a data gathering year for us. We looked at all the events we hosted, and we gathered data about how many people were showing up, students, community members. We looked at a lot of different things that I will share with you. And then again, the goal is to increase those numbers moving forward. So celebrating. Let's talk a little bit about our Icap committee. And for those who aren't aware, it's the individual career and academic plan that each student has to have. It is a state of Missouri requirement. What we did this year, we formed a rockstar committee.
Dr. Goldberg did an unbelievable job of getting the committee together. She's the leader of it. Includes myself, the middle school counselor, 3 high school teachers, 2 VPHS parents, the St. Louis Community College Coordinator of Recruitment and Outreach, the South Tech High School Admission Representative, the Missouri Army National Guard recruiter, and the Bentonville High School senior counselor. So we got a lot of great minds in the building who are going to continue to help us figure out, what our goal is to try to make sure we can figure out what exactly our students need to be most successful when they leave here. And it's, the state of Missouri has a lot of great work with the Missouri Connections website, and we use that often, but it's pretty robust, and we're trying to narrow down and really see what we need, and what our students need to be successful. So this group, that's our big goals moving forward. So that's a big celebration. To get that kind of group together is pretty unbelievable. We continue, I mentioned just briefly that every staff meeting, either a staff member, myself, or another district leader shared an engagement strategy intentionally, again, that a teacher could use the next day in class. So we then, made a document that documented all of those strategies, had links to how you could, access them to use them. So again, many of our staff members, when I visit the classrooms, we're using some very basic things that they learned in a very quick, 5-minute intentional engagement strategy during a staff meeting. We continue to value our positive student-staff relationships. It was another great year for that. We shared ways at a staff meeting how we intentionally connect with students, and we used a shared document, and everyone had their name. They shared in ways they intentionally, every staff member shared intentionally how they connect with students. And it was amazing the nuggets you got. I learned stuff that, in this 23 years, and I picked up a few different things. I was like, oh, I could do that every day to help making sure that I'm intentionally building positive relationships with our students. So I thought that was really cool. We talked about our Lighting the World on Fire award. This is how we it's the kind of lemon thing that the middle school does. We have a Lighting the World on Fire award, which is a certificate that one staff member, and I gave the first one at the start of the school year. Then kind of talk about the things that the person does at each staff meeting, and then that staff member gives it to someone else, and so on and so forth. It was what kind of came of it, I guess. Our staff members decided to give a gift with each of them too. So we had like Mike Dothrich received it one time, and he did some kind of thing on the engineering, the tech committee, and then the tech machine that he uses. And Tim Seavey made a ceramics bowl for one of them, and Terry Robards brought in food for the person. So it kind of became a really cool thing that we did at each staff meeting. So our PDC did a lot of great work this year, and it was really around, it's the tedious work of looking at our curriculum and making sure that they're connected to standards. We spent a lot of time working on that, and it's difficult, but again, it's the building blocks that will make sure our kids know and they're connecting to standards. We also started to look at our ACT data to help us and help inform us areas that we're doing well in connecting to standards, as well as maybe some areas we need to look at and identify and make sure that we spend time when we're looking at our curriculum and how our standards are connected to them. The baseline event data gathered, again, just some of the basic events we did. I've kept track of the freshman orientation, parent-teacher conferences, the musical homecoming, junior and senior post-secondary planning night, our National Alliance of Mental Illness presentation, the blood drive, academic and award nights, choir and band concert, and sports games, and some other ones as well. So we have a lot of baseline data, and the goal is, with that last bullet, I started quarterly parent-principal meetings that we started in February, and they're very successful. It was, I have one parent that lives here for sure, and really it's just kind of an open forum where our parents come in, and we'll do it quarterly. I have some kind of general updates of what's going on, but really it's kind of, they come to me with some wonders that they have or some things that they're curious about. And I also use them as kind of a sounding board to say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What are you guys' thoughts on that? So it was really successful. And that's one of our goals in August is that we will start talking about our baseline event data and be able to say, hey, what are you guys' thoughts? How do we, increase the attendance of these things? So a lot of great celebrations for us. Some areas of growth, though, as always. Again, we want to continue to do the model and sharing the best practices. I will say in the second semester, we got busy with a lot of other things that kind of stopped that intentional work. It was done hit or miss. So we need to get better at making sure that is something that's done at every staff meeting and every professional development opportunity we have. We want to make sure that we have small group and individual post-secondary planning meetings with every 11th grade and 12th grade student. It's been a little more difficult with COVID and those type of things, but we need to get back to that. And next year, we're going to have a career fair. That's been something that's come up and at our parent meetings. We want to make sure that we have a career fair next year. So looking at 2022-23, so you see a lot of the infinity symbols on my next to my bullets, and because the work never ends. The ICAP, yeah, it's not in our strategic plan goal for 22-23, but the work doesn't stop. We will continue to do that work. So you kind of see that that's going to continue through infinity. So the ones that we've already talked about, we'll continue that work. But what we're looking at for next year then for our student success, and I thank Mr. Wood and Ms. Hawkins for really spending a lot of time with us the last couple of weeks of trying to help us figure out what would be the best goals for our students, our staff, and our community for next year. And what we came up with is we want to engage students in developing personalized goals and monitoring their self-progress. So we're going to create a template where during advisory, each student will create personal goals, and then the advisory teacher bi-weekly will meet that student to see how they're progressing. It'll come back up in a little bit later, but we're excited. We want to put the ownership of learning on the students. It can't be on the teachers, can't be on the parents. So we're going to put it on the students and see where the goals are. They should be very different for each student. We want each student to self-reflect and be respectful of one another and other staff members. We also scored low on how our students treat one another in our student engagement survey. So that's an area, and it was really an interesting conversation where the dialogue became punishment and consequence to how about celebrating and modeling great behavior, and how do we do that? And it came to, hey, let's start meeting with our students when we return. Let's get the student council and leadership class together and find out, challenge them to be the models of great behavior, but also how do we celebrate these things and how do we put that stuff out in public to say, hey, this is what we want to be, this is what we want to do, rather than, again, we will have our, we'll deal with consequences and those type of things, but how do we make sure that the kids who are doing the right things are celebrated? Valuing our talented staff, again, some infinity notes there from the previous year, but the two big ones that came up were we're going to develop common systems, practices, and goals for improved student outcomes. And when we talk about that, we really want to work as a collaborative team as a staff and really come up with some systems and practices that we can all commit to. We're only as strong as our weakest link. And if a few teachers aren't keeping track of tardies, or they're allowing kids to use cell phones in classes without permission, then the kids are going to start using that elsewhere and doing things otherwise. So we want to create systems and develop that common system as a group that we can all consistently implement. We want to continue to provide ongoing timely feedback to improve employee effectiveness. And that was really kind of geared towards me. I need to be in the classrooms consistently. I want to manage up and give good quality feedback to each of our students informally, or our staff members informally and formally. So that's really on me to make sure that I'm valuing our talented staff. And they're like, we want to see you in the classroom as much as we can. So that sounds great. I hope to be there as often as I can. So that was great to hear. And then engaging our families and community. We're going to strengthen school and classroom relationships with our families. And we talked about, each staff meeting, taking 5 minutes to write a postcard to students, to parents, about their student. So it can be 1, 2, 3 cards, whatever it be, but we're going to create those cards and have those sent out. We've talked about positive phone calls, devoting some time for positive phone calls, those type of things. And then, of course, as I talked about, continue to publicize our events, continue to work with our parents to try to figure out the best ways to get more people in attendance at our events. So, I got it. What questions you got?
Anybody have any questions?
Teachers really said you wanted, they wanted you in their classroom more.
The two that were with me. So I know this will be recorded. I know I have some teachers on watch. That was developed as a group, but let's see. Mr. Picker.
It's fantastic.
I just want to say, I appreciate Ryan. He did really reach out to parents this year. And the communication was nice. I know after the last few years, and probably that has something to do with the kids' social skills as well, just not being at school and, so I think it's headed in the right direction, and we just need to keep building on that and making sure that the teachers, the administration, that we're communicating back and forth, and I think we'll get back to where we were.
Thank you, Kim.
So, thanks,
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Jim.
Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Alrighty. Next item is 2.04, presentation of organ tissue donation education, Susie Ward.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
I'm here. I promise I will not be 45. But I do have a few connections with your school district. I currently work for Gift of Life, but I retired from Character Plus, and I was here in 2016 to honor your middle school to be a state and national school of character with Ted Savage. So
Great.
it's thrilling for me to see that you all continue to embrace the importance of character education, and as your website says, education matters, and hearing your very positive, very realistic, you obviously have a very can-do staff that I know you're gonna exceed those expectations, and obviously support from the school board too. So I work for Gift of Life, and it's a nonprofit organization. And what our goal is to create awareness for organ tissue donation to high school students. So what happens is, as you well know, when the students go to the driver's bureau to get a permit, state ID, they're asked the question, do you want to be registered to be a deceased donor? And most people at that age have never really had a real conversation about it. So we have a free 30-minute, I'll repeat that, free 30-minute online program that teachers can implement anytime. Obviously, you have a very full curriculum with high expectations, but we really believe ours is aligned with it and assists another skill in their learning toolbox. So as I said, it's 30 minutes, and I guess I have the clicker here, so I'll go ahead and go on here. Okay, so who are we? So the important thing is there is a group of organizations that came together that built this curriculum for the organ tissue donation. It was DESE, Mid-American Transplant in St. Louis, Midwest Transplant in Kansas City, Department of Health and Senior Services, Missouri Kidney Program, and most importantly to you all here, some individuals from Missouri School Board. So they all felt this was really important curriculum, so you all can integrate it anytime. So it's very hard for me to read that one. So the reason why it's so important that nationwide, there's over 100,000 people every day wake up hoping they get a phone call that says, we have a life-saving organ or tissue for you. And just in Missouri, there's over 1,200 people waiting for that. And obviously, these organs can help save and enhance people's lives. Very sadly, every 10 minutes, a new person is added to the waiting list. So hopefully I'll keep mine in 10 minutes. And just one person will be added to the waiting list. But this program, as I said, is 30 minutes, is online. And what it just helps the student have an informed decision. We're not saying we want them to go out and immediately go register, but like your school wants education matters, our motto is the conversation matters. And most importantly is because most of these people will be minors. And let's say they hear our presentation, they go, I believe in it, but never had the conversation with their family, their loved ones. And sadly, something would happen to them. The parents are approached and said, are you willing to have your child donate their organs? You would expect the family to be traumatized. And if they've never had that conversation with a child, they may just say, I don't think Susie knew what she was saying yes to. We don't know if that's what she really wanted, so we're just gonna say no. But obviously I did, so that's why we want the kids to have a conversation with you all. So in our 30-minute one, it is 8 short steps, and there is a video. I'm not going to show it here because of time. I will not show it to you. But the first video just talks about the information about organ tissue donation. And then the second video is just high school students who have received organ donations themselves and how it obviously has changed their lives. All we ask is that if you say yes to implementing this program, at the very end of the teacher's presentation, is that they do a very short survey, and it is confidential. All we want to know is the teacher's name, how many students, and then there's like 5 short questions, like, do you want to be an organ donor? Yes, no. Do you agree to have a conversation with your family? Yes, no. And again, all it does, it gives us some information to show our impact. And we're very happy to say that we've done this for over 25 years, and really started in the Kansas City area, and now it's going in here in St. Louis. And 75% of the students, after they hear the presentation and have conversations with the family, have said yes to wanting to register to be an organ donor. One person can donate tissues and to impact 75 lives. And one person can make a difference to 8 individuals, because as you well know, we have 2 lungs, we have 2 kidneys. And so I know that one person can make a difference to someone's life. And this personally why I'm here today, that my uncle received a heart transplant. And he was able to see his daughter get married, hold his first grandchild, and now I'm a brand new grandma myself, little Rosie. And I can't imagine if I had severe health issues and thinking, am I ever going to see this beautiful girl grow up or not? So every donation makes a big difference. The great thing is, with a lot of help from Bessie and input from school boards, it's definitely aligned to your curriculum. I've done presentations to driver's ed classes. I've done to 9th grade health classes, even done it in English classes where students will debate, here are the pros for donation, here's the cons for donations. So there's many ways that a teacher, in a smart assist room is here and the teachers here, I know you'll find a way to easily implement it. And again, because it's online, you can do it whenever is naturally occurring with the appropriate curriculum. I don't know what that says. Does that say the end? Like, where did it go? Okay, so I do have some handouts for you all. It's a brochure that has information. Would you mind passing that? Thank you, appreciate it. And this next one is just commonly asked questions that some people say, you know, can the students opt out if they're not comfortable with it? Yes, they can definitely opt out with it. So you all will always know your students and your children best, their social emotional needs. But we really feel this is something that these young adults need to know about and really to have a conversation. And we also tell the students also that, just as you all well know, that sometimes it's the students who are educating the parents, not only is the parents just educating the kids. There's a lot of myths out there that you can't take another casket, that you have to be a certain age. Like on the back of the brochure, it really, we kind of decipher what's on Grey's Anatomy and Netflix to the reality of really what teacher information is all about. But does anyone have any questions? I'm going to give Marcy an envelope, so we hope at your next board meeting that you'll have time to discuss it and you'll see the value in this. So you can do the online program. Also, I live right here in town, and I'd be happy to come over and do a presentation in person, or we also could do Zoom also. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
For closing comment, I'm also a tennis coach. So very impressive with all of the high school achievements to go from district to conference to state and just the character of those individuals. And I thought I would just stop at that till I heard you all listen to the Stiefel financial analysis. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad you all have that gift. Thank you for your knowledge.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody have any comments they want to make on the agenda tonight? Seeing none,
I'll make the motion to approve.
I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. Next item is consent items 4.01 through 4.07. Would anybody on the board like to pull any of these out for separate consideration? Hearing none. I'll make a motion to approve the consent items. Can I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor of the consent items, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Our consent items are approved. Action items. The 22-23 district committees. Dr. Tim Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. We are very excited to reignite and in some cases fire up our committee work for the 22-23 school year. Again, a tremendous shout out to both Julie, Kelly, Ryan, and previously Megan and Dr. Lowe for all their strategic plan updates. It should be noted that the district as a whole this year, we'll hear more updates next month again, but the district as a whole accomplished over 50 actionable and measurable goals on our strategic plan in year one of a very aggressive strategic plan. And when we talked about building out a strategic plan several years ago, we talked about how we want to be a living document, an actionable document that not only drives our measurable goals, but aligns with our resources and continues that continuous improvement process and strategic thinking. And so to hear the work of those leaders today and previously what we'll hear in July is exciting. And this district work, the work of the committees that are presented to you this evening are the committees. Some have been established, some are brand new or reignited in many cases. And so we're excited to get those going for 22-23. Everyone on the board, but also our public can see kind of the purpose, when they meet, times, et cetera, and who is participating on those. For the board this evening, we are looking for liaisons to kind of serve back and forth with those various committees so that hopefully Mr. Coates can speak more to this. You can speak, just kind of give updates from time to time also about the work that's going on in the district as well and being more informed when you're meeting with stakeholders and others.
It's the committee system is kind of a thing that we use in the past, especially when Dr. Lee is here. It does give the board members a really chance to get into some more meat of what's going on. And then also be part of being able to do some board updates when the committee updates to the whole school board. I currently serve on the safety one. We had our meeting tonight before the board meeting. So I'm looking to fill these with different board members on areas that they seem interested or feel comfortable or would like to learn more about, all of the above. So I'd like to get them all, I guess, all filled as possibly could, because some of them start meeting pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'd love to be on the wellness committee. unless
Me
somebody
too.
else is-
I know, that's why I'm here. That's why I
Or they-
join the school
Well,
board
what
with
if
this
you do
kind of
that?
stuff.
I do teaching and learning.
Yeah, I want to do teaching and learning.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Everybody loves teaching and learning. Everybody wants to be
Can we
on.
have more than one board member on the committee? Or does it only?
Yes, we
Yes,
just can't
the one
have,
thing you
we
can't have.
can't
is
have a
quorum,
quorum.
obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, which is fine.
You can't have a what?
Can't have a quorum.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing, just be aware, there are 7 committees, so we did try not to stretch everybody too thin. You're welcome to be on. more
But
than
if you'd
one.
like to be on more than one,
Right.
it is a pretty big commitment. I mean, some of them meet every month, some of them only meet every other month, some meet every quarter.
I was previously on the CSIP committee, so I'd like to be on the strategic plan school improvement committee, if that's possible.
That's good for me. Marcy, you get this?
Jeremy's strategic.
How about if I do calendar committees?
Great.
Stuff I do. We're good.
Nicole definitely wants
Here in a free
Wellness?
fun way.
Yes, please.
Nicole on wellness. They
Teaching and learning.
teaching, learning.
Teaching,
Jeremy,
do
we got-
teaching and learning as well?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, two is good.
yeah.
Okay, what do we have open?
I have not
Technology
heard anything
and
for
facilities.
technology, and facilities.
I'll take facilities.
Believe me, I don't want to take technology, so
How about somebody take technology?
I have a hard time.
What about
I'm not-
Phyllis?
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
not a
say,
technology
Phyllis,
guy.
I don't know.
I can be on the technology with you. That's cool.
Can we
Alright.
check with Phyllis later, maybe?
Yeah,
she
if
would
she
like
wants
to-
to. Absolutely.
I don't
Yeah.
want to sign it.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to either,
No.
that's
No,
what,
I
but
think we need to
but-
assign her.
We
Yeah.
can definitely be on,
yeah, okay,
absolutely. But we do have, and she can go on any of these she would like.
okay.
We've got them all filled.
We have them all filled, but she's welcome to go on and double up or whatever we want to do.
No offense,
So
technology.
this is really,
I have a limited
I mean,
set of
people were
skills.
just fighting to get on that technology.
I'm just saying.
You know what?
All about us.
But this is really a good, this is really a good thing. And it does, gives you the ability to kind of dive deep into some things. Okay.
Thank you.
Next item, 5.02, approval of a purchase of a maintenance truck. Tim.
Oh, please, thank you. Sorry, I forgot that was me. So yeah, a while back, the Board of Education has encouraged really for quite some time for the district to explore purchasing a vehicle to support district operations. Some of the reasons behind it, we obviously don't have a district vehicle, so that makes us very dependent on vendors for certain things like shoveling our snow in our parking lots. That typically comes to a tune of about $7,500 per year, but also just the day-to-day operations. So anything from mulching around the district to moving furniture. Currently, right now, we're really fortunate because we have an employee that has a truck. It doesn't mind us using it, but quite frankly, that's just not. It's not good. It's not good practice.
No.
So what we're bringing to you for consideration tonight. And I'm not a vehicle person, so everything I'm about to say sounds foreign to me. It is a 2022 Ford F-250 Super Cab. The vehicle is strictly for district purposes. It will help us, like we said, not only kind of take care of the day-to-day operations, but also eliminate our dependency on vendors. So right now, on average, over the last several years, it's been $7,500 that we spend with vendors just to kind of take care of our parking lot during the winter months. This vehicle does come equipped to handle a snow plow and all the equipment with it. We would still, full disclosure, have to purchase that plow itself if the vehicle is approved, but it's equipped to handle that. If approved, it would be accounted for in the current 21-22 budget. As Dr. Lowe alluded to, we're still very optimistic that we will have a surplus of at least 1 to 4% in this year's school budget. So this is a good time to look at something like this. We also have saved the district approximately $6,000 by using a government pricing program. So quite frankly, if you look at vehicles right now on the market, what we're proposing, the cost is $40,000 to the district. It's a good time to buy for a lot of reasons. One, the price; two, the government coupon we've got, and quite frankly, three, the financial position we're currently in. Not to mention that basically the truck can pay for itself in a very short amount of time. And given our limited, size of campus and need, it should last us a very, very long time. So it is our recommendation tonight that the board consider approving the truck as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the emotion.
You like it, huh?
Anybody have any other questions? I'm sure we do.
How much is a plow approximately
Um,
for?
There's many that you can purchase, what a driveway pro runs about 8,000.
Okay,
If you get a big V, it can go as high as 15, 20. You don't need that for this application, because you're not doing high-speed roads. You're doing parking lots.
Right.
So probably a driveway pro is an 8-foot wide plow, so you want to make sure the plow is wider than the track of the truck.
Mhm.
So that you can clear. The other advantage of this is we have a huge problem of the snow plow company, whatever it might be, putting the snow where we don't want the snow.
right,
And trust me, by plowing for years, nobody wants the snow anywhere. They want it to disappear.
right,
And that doesn't work well, except in New York, they put it on barges, send out the ocean.
right.
But, Chris's group would be able to pick a little bit better location and right in front of the door. That will give us that ability. I think it's gonna
So
help
you're
a
gonna
lot.
dump it in the river?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we got the river. How about?
We get approval on that one.
Yeah, will this also, like, if we have an event on the weekend, will somebody be up here plowing snow, or will this only be during school days.
Yeah, so it's for district snow.
Okay, so
Right.
anytime we need snow removed.
Right. Now, one of the things that we also talked about with the snow plowing too is we're always, they would tell us otherwise, we tend to be on the last or the bottom of that list too. So sometimes it's very questionable even if we can have school the next day because of the timing of some of our plows and different things. This gives us just more control over when we can plow as well.
The larger lots get the
Oh, yeah.
hit for, it costs, the guy gets more money, let's just
Right,
face
of course.
it.
But if
It's
it was-
the economy of scale.
If it was a snow day though, we may plow, but that doesn't mean it's still holding the vet because.
If school is
the
canceled, we do not
canceled,
hold events. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
We're not
Right.
gonna jeopardize, yeah,
Right.
we
You
don't
may still
jeopardize
get
our
plowed.
staff or
Yeah.
our students.
Of course not.
And if it's not safe enough to come into school.
But it might save a day that you didn't get plowed.
Yeah,
Which has happened.
Okay, that's not.
The other issue we talking about, Tim was talking about funding, I'll give you an example of this truck, because it is in the government program, and not all dealers deal with government programs. This particular Broadway Ford happens to be one of the top that deals in government program. It doesn't matter the brand, it's a dealer choice. All of the Valley Park City vehicles that they currently run now, they all came from Broadway Ford. Almost every local one has, because Broadway Ford's the only one in the area now that wants to deal anything to do it. It's a lot of work for them. But, and now with vehicles so hard to get, they don't need the sales anyway. But a typical truck like this with a snowplow package, if you went and bought it for your personal use, you'd be looking at about 65 to 70,000.
As you guys can see in the
Trucks are-
memo, we had a hard time even getting bids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, they
I
don't, they just don't
noticed that.
have them.
uh,
And
Right.
used vehicles are ridiculous. You can make money. A guy just turned in a Jeep. He got 30,000 miles on it. He got 24,000 more than he paid for it new. Because they just don't have it. All right.
That's how we're gonna afford college.
Any other questions?
Oh my God.
Right?
Excuse me?
Any other question?
Just gonna say, Chris, I know you work on your cars and your trucks, your personal stuff, and thank you for the way that you've used it to help the district out. I know it's, not something we wanted to continue, so I hope that this will help your truck as well. So, but thank you for the work that you do for, for keeping that, going in the district and their work around the district.
Absolutely.
Solve a lot of problems I don't think all of us know about. So
Yes.
thank you.
I'm quite sure we all don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I'm positive there's things that you take care of, so thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have a motion in a
Yeah,
second?
we do.
Okay. All in favor of the purchase of the Broadway Ford truck,
Aye.
Super Duty at 40,000, even signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We have a truck.
All right. Woo-hoo.
We're moving into the 21st century.
Big time.
You gotta take a picture.
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session. May I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. By roll call vote, Jeremy.
Aye.
Come.
Aye.
Please.
Aye.
Nicole.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.